On this episode of FSA Unplugged.
They thought we were Japanese because we had a really long hair, me and my twin. So they
And
were
then
like
your
Japanese.
items like this.
They always say, konnichiwa.
I mean, it's fine with us, but the public.
All the sympathy I gave you saying that one day you'll bring your son here. All the fucking tears I shed with you, motherfucker.
Rolling on that.
You got angry at me because I keep saying shit with a J instead of a D.
What's that?
Rolling.
You know how JM said, it could be in the video too. You know how JM said Ojo?
Yeah.
I think I started saying shit with like a J as well. And then you got annoyed at me, like, stop it. Okay.
For what? What did you say? What
I
word?
can't remember what word it was. God. It's not cordial. It's something.
Cordial.
Cordial. You know what I mean?
Cool.
Oh, yeah. Continue.
Okay, I don't know.
And dahil dyan, simula na tayo sa ating podcast. As you can see, Tagalog version tayo ngayon. It's a
Wow,
very
grabe.
special episode today because we got Jen here.
Hi!
So,
Kamusta po?
kamusta tayo lahat? Ngayon, okay lang tayo. Okay lang.
Okay lang.
Okay. So, tapos na yung part na to, we can pretend na walang camera.
Okay.
So, tapos na yung introduction.
Okay.
So, JM and Kate as per usual.
Hey.
And, what's that?
too?
Oh, nandito rin pala si Xander,
Come on,
our
Jordan.
auditor, and our Vice Presidente, Giordano.
Kumusta, si... what's the word?
Bastos.
No, hindi.
Basta.
Fuck you. Okay. No, what's the introduction thing?
Kamusta kayo?
No.
Mabuhay.
I'll say my name, goddamn.
Ako si Jordan.
Ako si Jordan. Hey.
And Molly is here.
And Molly.
Ako si Molly.
Got it, Molly? Okay?
With the habang highlight.
Okay.
Kailangan natin ng tulong ni Molly.
Keep going, lie down.
DSWD. Ano tawag mo?
It's okay, my mind's
Bantay
over.
Bata.
163.
163. Ayun naman. So, ngayon, actually, kasi alam ko na marami kang, stories na,
Yeah.
story na, kasi matagal na rin tayo magkilala, dati pa to sa Kilcoy. Ang dami natin pinagsamahan.
Way back 2013?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ano
Oh, 2014 I think.
2014. Di ba
Yeah.
nag-ano tayo doon?
Ano eh?
Yung Christmas party. Di ba
Yeah.
nagsimula tayo ng doon?
No, because I came here in Australia like 2011.
2011.
Sa'yo ba? 2011. And
Oh,
so way back 2011
Ah,
when we first met.
yeah.
My mom met you too when you were young. No?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
So, sabihan mo kami ng parang overall like, journey mo dito sa Australia kasi, interesado kami sa sa perspective mo eh.
Okay. Actually, wala naman sa plano na pumunta ako dito sa Australia. Like, nagtanong yung daddy ko at yung mom ko kung gusto daw namin magbakasyon. Like, if you want to have a holiday here. And then, sabi namin, okay lang, pero babalik. And in that time, I was in 4th year high school, like year 10. Last year na siya ng ng high school ko, like high school level sa Pilipinas, which is graduating ako. And then, gusto kong mag-college, mag-university sa Pilipinas. But my dad wants us to go here in Australia. And then sabi ko, kung holiday, pwede naman. But, kung mag-aaral ako dito, ayoko. Lahat kami ganun, ayaw namin. And then, my dad lied to us. And then, just a holiday. Holiday lang daw. Tapos, pagdating namin dito, like, graduate ako ng high school, like, April 12, if I'm not mistaken, 2011. And then, dumating kami dito ng Australia, April 14, 2011. Yeah, and then, May 3, enroll na pala kami.
Kasi diba, sa Pinas hanggang 4th year lang, diba?
Yeah.
Tapos dito may mga year 7 pa.
Yes.
Kasi wala pa dun sa, wala pa sa sistema natin sa Pinas
So,
yung ano eh.
wala pa siyang K-12.
That's right.
Wala siyang year 11, wala siyang year 12. So, until year 10 lang siya. Tapos, pagdating ko dito, high school ulit ako, and I already graduated high school.
That's what happened to me as
Yes, 2
well.
years.
Yeah.
Because
So, I did 2 years again.
it's like the year after I came here, that's when they implemented the K-12.
Yeah.
And that's why
really?
I had to do a year. So I already graduated in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Tapos
And then you need to graduate again.
So I had to do
Yeah.
11 and 12.
That's what happened to me, and then, ayoko siya. Like, I think yung first year ko dito sa Australia, I hate it.
I mean, for context kasi...
Not because of the people around, but homesick,
Yeah.
something like that. Like, I used to grow up like 16 years sa Pilipinas and then like change environment, change
Kasi,
people.
I mean, for context, nakatira kami dati, we used to live in a small town
Yeah,
called
small
Kilcoy.
town.
And at that time, 2011, you would agree with me na napaka-quiet.
Sobrang quiet. But, palaki siya ng palaki yung population sa Kilcoy. And I think now it's more than 100 Filipinos
That's still kind of
living in
small.
Kilcoy.
No, I mean,
more than now.
But that
Before?
makes sense, yeah. Oh,
Yeah. More than now.
But do you want to tell us kung saan kayo sa Pilipinas? Like,
Ano kami, not exactly in Batangas. Popular kasi yung Batangas. So, maybe like around, like 2 hours drive from Manila to our place.
Oh,
Something like
Like-
It's not traffic.
is it like a city like?
No, it's small town too.
Small town as well.
Alam mo ba yung word na squatter?
Squatter. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, paano mo ba yung nasabi?
Well, squatter, I mean, alam ko sa isip ko, pero parang...
Ang hirap kasi
hirap
explain. Mahirap siya. Alam mo ba yung squatter?
Squatter.
Like, nakatira ka sa mga, yung mga bahay-bahay na dikit-dikit, na parang
yeah.
gobyerno yung may-ari ng lupa nyo. Gobyerno yung
Squatter.
may-ari.
Squatter. Yeah, it's...
Doon kami nagmula, like, sa squatter area lang kami nagmula noon. My dad is the one who built our house. Really small one. And then, nung wala pa kami sa Australia, sobrang hirap. I used to go to school without like any money in my hands. You know, in Philippines, pag pumunta ka ng school, you need money.
Like
Kailangan mo
pocket
ng
money.
pera, like baon. Then, papasok kami sa school, like, yung kinain lang namin is like rice and sa may sabaw na toyo.
Yes.
Sometimes, toyo, then mantika, then lalagyan lang ng kaunting asin.
Wow.
Yun yung kinakain namin.
Minsan, kape rin, diba?
Minsan, kape, sabaw sa kanin. We use coffee to put it in the rice. Yeah. And then, that's what we eat. And then, we're going to walk. Naglalakad kami ng maybe like ilang kilometers ba? Siguro yung simula sa bahay namin sa Kilcoy hanggang IGA.
Oh, wow, layo, ha? Wow.
Ilang kilometers na yun.
Siguro, maybe 5, 6, 7, maybe a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Around that. Oh,
So, we
malaki.
have to walk like that. Yeah.
That's like,
Even, so if it is raining, yung dad ko may dalang mountain bike. Doon ako sa harapan. Tapos, hatid niya ako. Sobrang walang-wala kami noon. Tapos, nakaranas din kami ng yung like insult from other people. Yeah, bullying, something like that.
How long does it take you na maglakad from sa bahay sa school?
It depends. Kung gaano kami kabagal maglakad. Kasi minsan, di ba, pag may kausap ka sa paglalakad, hindi mo naman mapapansin na ano. So, minsan 30 minutes, ganun. So, depende. Or 20 minutes kung kaya mong mabilisan. Pag late ka na.
So,
Yeah.
aga dapat gigising.
Nung pumunta ako dito sa Australia, homesick siya. So, homesick, umiiyak ako. Tapos, halos lahat, tapos minaiwan niya ako na jowa. Like, boyfriend. Yeah, minaiwan akong boyfriend sa Pilipinas. And then, sobrang homesick. Tapos, parang laging kong gustong umuwi.
For how many years?
I think, unang beses umuwi kami 2014. So, 3 years muna kami dito bago kami umuwi ulit. Pero, ang laki ng ibinago sa akin ng Australia. Sa aming family. Sobrang laki. Nag-umpisa ang daddy sa 457 visa. And then, kinuha niya si Kuya Ferds, yung panganay kong kapatid. Kinuha niya si Kuya Ferds, and then, sumunod ang mami at yung pangalawa kong kapatid, si Kuya Jom. And then, actually, wala naman talaga sa plano talaga na kuhanin din kami agad-agad. Nagkataon lang na naka-experience kami ng yung something like family issue. Hindi ko na lang banggitin.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, family issue, and then nalaman ng company sa Kilcoy. And then my mom's like get affected with that one. So kailangan niyang like hindi siya focus sa trabaho. Umiiyak siya sa trabaho. Kaya nagdesisyon yung company na umuwi ang mami. Like agad-agad the next day, umuwi siya. Then sinagot ng KPC yung pagdapunta namin dito. Parang utang ba ganun. Yun. Then, yun nga. Hanggang sa na-PR kami, na citizen. We met some friends. Dami namin na-met na friends. Isa na nga si JM. Yeah. Ang hilig ko sa bata kasi Kaya even na sobrang bata ni JM noon. What age ka nga JM noon?
Siguro, kasi 2013, siguro nag-11.
11? And then I was like 17 years old.
Kasi alala ko nang lagi tayo pumunta. Doon tayo sa bahay niyo. Doon tayo sa may...
Sa bahay namin siya lagi pumupunta. Practice ng
Practice
dance.
ang sayaw, yes.
Oh, I like that. I wish I
May
like that.
footage pa siguro na sa Facebook.
Yes! Ay, kung gusto niyo pong makita yung video sa YouTube, I'm willing to share.
Baka i-delete ko na. Wala lang. Christmas party tapos may
Yeah. Sobrang active namin.
Ano
Ang
tawag?
Filipino community, sobrang active namin doon.
Even now.
Even now.
Pero yung community siguro sa Kilcoy, parang kasi
because it's like one. Like everyone's like cooperating or something like that.
Yeah, but since
Everyone's willing to join.
Yeah. But now because I'm still in touch with the Kilcoy community, since community is now expanded, parang ano na sila ba?
Like kanya-kanya na. Kanya-kanya.
Kaya parang pag nag-look back ako, I feel lucky na nasa small tayo noon dati. Kasi talagang...
Before it's not much Filipino, but everyone's like just in one group, something like that. Everyone's willing to join any events. Sumasayaw kami, ma-attend kami ng sayaw. Kung ano-ano. Malaking binago sa akin ng Australia. Ano pa gusto niyo itanong?
That sounds good. Kasi nung ako dito sa Australia, I was looking for a Filipino and I couldn't find anyone. Like, I was so desperate that I would like talk to a random person and I just couldn't find any Filipino to hang out with and stuff. And it doesn't help that my mom wouldn't,
I feel you kasi nung dumating din kami sa Australia, kami pa lang yung kauna-unang like teenager na na Pilipino. Wala pang bata, puro parents pa lang. So kami pa lang yung kauna-unahang doon. Naghahanap din ako ng Pilipino. And una ko nang meet ay sina Katna Tates. Yeah, kasi sila yung sumunod. Tapos yun sina April. Tapos yun, padami na ng padami. Yeah, it feels good kasi namimit ka na ibang kalahi.
At least may makaka-relate ka sa experiences mo at sa transfer kasi nang dumating ako 2011 mga June ata yun, nang siguro, yeah, na parang feeling isolated, tsaka feeling alone ako kasi, I'm the only child sa daddy ko. And I was the only one there kasi, nakatira kami kasama sila, yung sila, Papa po, sila Tito Donald, mga ganon. And, sila, ang nakilala ko lang doon na siguro na, sila Kuya Mike. So I didn't really have any, tapos nung my first day in primary, it was kinda tough kasi, I mean, Kuya MJ siguro nasa, na siya, pero he was in year 7, I was in year 4. So, parang nahirapan din ako doon.
Mahirap mag-adjust pag bago ko pa lang dito sa Australia. Pag bago ka pa dito sa Australia, para kang T-words. Yeah, T-words. Kasi halos, mahihiya. Kasi pag, you know what I mean. Mahihiya ka kasi magsalita pag dumating ka dito sa Australia. Kahit yung kumbaga, kasi may English lesson naman sa Pilipinas eh. May English lesson sa Pilipinas from primary to high school. This is English lesson.
Yeah.
Pero pagdating mo dito sa Australia, kahit maalam ka namang nakakapagsalita ka ng English, parang nahihiya ka kasi parang iniisip mo, tama ba yung grammar ko? Until now, ganun ako. Nakakasalita naman ako ng English, pero nasa isip ko lagi, baka ma-judge yung grammar ko. Lalo na, kasi para sa akin wala namang sa ano to, sa akin lang naman. Parang kasi sa pagkakakilala ko kasi minsan, may mga tao kasi na parang perfectionist, which is like, gusto nila perfect yung grammar, perfect yung way ng pagsasalita mo. Ganun. Kaya parang nawawalan ako ng confidence na magsalita ng pure English. Yeah, kaya parang hirap ganun.
And mga perfectionist na tao talaga. Yung parang ang high ng standard. Tapos lalo na pag na di ko alam kung yung baka na-experience mo to pag unang beses mo umuwi ng Pinas. Yung reception nila doon sa'yo na parang so parang anong experience mo na nung
unang umuwi ako ng Pilipinas, akala nila kasi pagka nakarating ka ng ibang bansa, mayaman ka, social ka na. Yun yung nasa isip nila eh, na porket pa, kumbaga iniisip nila, ay kumikita to ng dollars. Ang yaman na siguro nito, maarte na siguro to, ganun. Parang ang taas na siguro ng yung dating niya sa sarili niya. Kasi, galing ibang bansa eh. Kumbaga, Australiana na yan. Mayaman na yan. Pero hindi kasi nila alam na pagka nasa Australia ka, parehas lang yan. Yung kinikita mo dito, kung kumikita ka ng $800 per week, para din siyang 800 pesos sa Pilipinas. Kasi, sa dami ng bayarin, tapos weekly pa. Diba? Para lang siyang 800 pesos. Malaki siya kung iuuwi mo siya ng Pilipinas. Pero kung nasa Australia ka at doon mo siya i-spend, sobrang parehas lang. Para lang din siyang pesos. Kaya pag sinasabi nila, Australia na yan kasi madami na yung pera. Dollars na yan.
Parang pag sinasabi ka ng ganyan, parang naiinis ka rin.
Parang gusto mo.
Did you feel that way at all?
Parang gusto mo na na sabi niya, di naman porket nasa Australia kami, ganito, ganyan, may mga din naman kami, may mga bills naman kami doon. Sabi, hindi kami may-ari ng bahay, ganun. Parang, kasi nung unang umuwi ako doon, sasabihin pa nila sa'yo, ay, ang puti mo na, Australiana ka na talaga, ganun. Tapos parang, parang hiyang-hiya na sila sa'yo na lumapit sila, yung ganun. Tapos parang, kahit kaya mo namang gawin yung isang bagay, sila yung gagawa for you. Yung parang kunwari, kumain ka, mo na dyan, iwanan mo na dyan yung pinagkainan mo. Hindi pwede madumihan ng Australiano. Parang ganun, parang, in a good way naman yung ginagawa nila, pero parang nakaka-offend. Parang, kaya ko naman. Na ganun, parang, ginagawa ko rin naman yan sa Australia. Nag-iba lang yung lugar. Kasi sa Pilipinas kasi pag alam nila galing ka ng ibang bansa, parang feeling nila na nasayo na lahat kasi. Kasi parang hindi ka na naaarawan. Ganun.
That's true. Meron kami na sa Philippines na remember ko, I was in a different, I moved school. Tapos na-realize ko, meron kaming foreigner na classmate. Tapos na-realize ko pag kami foreigner, parang iba yung trato nila.
Yes.
Like, it's like, we're both human. You know, the only difference is that, you know, the eyes are different, the skin is different.
The language is
Pero,
different.
why do you have to treat this person so special?
Yeah.
More than, you know,
Exactly.
us, kahit na mas more capable pa nga tayo in a way, like, we're more talented and all that. You know, regardless of how smart you look, basta pag, if you don't look, different or unique in a way, parang,
Yeah, parang, kasi lagi, like, minsan pinag-iisip ako rin yan kung bakit nangyayari yan.
Diba?
Tapos nare-realize, like, my first realization is like, maybe kasi, diba, from what we see, like, sa TV, like, yung teleserye, there's always that family na,
that's
galing abroad, tapos
social na.
ganyan. So, maybe that's where
I
it
think,
started.
nagiging impact din yun sa TV.
But it's getting better now.
Huh?
It's getting better now.
It's getting better.
Like compared to like back then.
Would you think that?
I never thought of it that way, but I think yun nga, yung influence.
Yeah,
Like, yung sa TV, yung
whatever they watch,
pinoportray nila na parang, yes, I've been
Pagka
I've been in the
nakarating,
US, tapos nakita mo yung mga dress nila, it's so
social.
luxurious.
Like, lots of jewelries.
Pati nga, pero do you think na, yun nga, what Jordan asked, do you think it's improved? Like, from now or from the past now?
Still the same. Still the same. Kahit nung last na umuwi kami, ganun pa rin na, parang, ano na yun, ganun na siya. Ganun na talaga siya na, kahit na yung konting simpleng problema sa Pilipinas, parang, pag nasa ibang bansa ka, lahat asa sa'yo. Yung parang, pag hindi mo sila napahiram, kunyari, naghiram sila ng tapos hindi mo sila napahiram, parang, sasabihin nila sa'yo, ay, nakarating ka lang ng ibang bansa. Parang, ang damot mo na. Parang, parang try to understand. Kasi hindi naman porket kumikita kami ng dollars, wala na kami binabayaran.
Parang may expectations na because you live in a
na
different
matutulungan mo sila
country.
kasi kung nasa ibang bansa ka.
Yeah, parang
Ganun.
mas more advantage na yung living situation, no? Like, yeah.
Pero as in talaga, yung buhay ko sa Australia is like a big change. Hindi ko siya in-imagine. Like, kahit isang beses sa buhay ko, never ko siyang in-imagine na makakarating. Yung mababago yung buhay namin. Imagine, from a squatter. From si maliit na bahay na hindi mo naman pagmamayari yung lupang tinatayuan. Tapos ngayon, nandito ka, parang settle na yung buhay mo kasi citizen ka na dito. Parang kahit anong mangyari, okay ka na, settled na talaga.
Tsaka alala ko rin yung bahay niya sa Kilcoy yun. Malaki rin yun, di ba?
Yes, pero hindi naman kasi, kumbaga, pag nandito ako sa Australia, di ba, nag-rent ka, gano'n.
Pero ngayon na...
Ngayon, nagkabahay kami sa sipag at tiyaga ng family ko, especially my mom and dad. Yeah, so sobrang sipag nila. And yung pangarap talaga yung pinaka nagdala sa kanila dito. Actually, ang daddy at mami yung pinaka may pangarap. Minsan nga nasa Pilipinas kami, nung wala pa kami dito, pag napapadaan ang mami sa bahay na malaki, sasabihin niya, balang araw, magkakaroon din ako yun. Parang nagiging motivation niya yung mga nagkakaroon ng bahay. Parang ginagawa na niya inspiration ba? Pag nakakita siya naman. Ang swerte, sabi niya, ang swerte siguro ng may-ari ng bahay na to. Sabi, ano kaya trabaho nila, ganun. Paano nila kaya napundar yung bahay na yun? Sabi, balang araw, magkakaroon din ako niyan. The bad thing is like, nung magkaroon kami ng malaking bahay sa Pilipinas, not really malaki yun, pero para sa amin okay na yun. Hindi naman namin natitirahan.
Kasi...
Yeah, yung younger sister ng daddy ang nakatira dun sa bahay na yun. Which is bad for us kasi parang yun yung pangarap nila eh. Tapos, hindi naman sila yung nakatira. Parang, siguro, kung ilang taon na kami dito sa Australia, gano'n na rin katagal nakatira yung tiyahin ko dun sa Pilipinas. Parang gano'n. Parang lungkot lang na parang kahit gustuhin mo mang bumalik sa sarili mong bayan, parang hindi pa rin pwede.
Kasi ang dami kailangan pag-isipan.
Kasi, kumbaga, ang buhay mo nasa Pilipinas, pero yung pera at trabaho at pangarap mo nasa Australia. Ganun. Parang, pag wala yung Australia, wala ka din. Yung parang wala din mararating yung buhay. Kasi hindi naman sa kasi yung sa Pilipinas kasi parang more on corruption.
Oo, pati.
More on corruption.
Hindi pa nagbaba.
Kasi siguro sa hirap na rin ang buhay, ganun. Lalo niya may COVID pa. Yeah. But the thing, ang pinaka nagustuhan ko sa Pilipinas, pansin nyo, kahit anong problema ng mga Pilipino, they always smile.
Oh, yes.
Lagi silang nakatawa. Laging nakangiti yung mga Pilipino.
Not when I met you.
Huh?
Not when I met you.
See?
I never smiled to you until like
Yeah, when I
2
met
years in.
Jordan, nung na-met ko si Jordan, he never talked to me.
shy as shit.
He's really shy. Sometimes I would pass and then I was like, hello. And then he was like, hello. And then that's it. Cut off conversation.
Because he was too shy.
Yeah, he's really shy.
But
But he's close. You're close with Kuya Jom
Yeah,
already.
I love Kuya.
Okay, joke.
Yeah, he's close with Kuya Jom and he never talked to me.
Yeah, but it's the same to your mom too.
He's really shy. He's really different from before. The first time I met him and now.
Yeah.
Actually,
He used to call me Bastos ka. But before, he never say anything to me. Even a single word.
it's evolved over time.
It's really a big improvement.
Actually, with that pala, I want to ask you, kasi dati, when we were still at Kilcoy, I never knew na umalis na pala kayo papunta ng Oki.
Yeah.
So, how was that yung transition from...
Para din siyang, nagpunta ka ng Pilipinas, nasa Pilipinas ka, tapos pumunta ka ng Australia. Para din siyang ganun, yung feeling. Kasi, syempre, parang yung environment, parang pumunta uli sa panibagong bansa.
Yeah.
Yeah, parang ganun. Pumunta ka na uli sa panibagong bansa. Kasi, I think 4 years or more than 4 years ata ako nagstay ng Kilcoy eh.
Oh, yeah.
4 years ata, 2014
Pabi,
ata.
kailan kayo lumipat dito?
I think almost 2015 na lumipat kami dito. Hindi ko kasi sure exact.
Oo.
Pero I think 4 years na kami nagstay ng Kilcoy. Tapos, syempre, sobrang close ko naman sa mga Pilipino doon. Alam niyo ni JM. Sobrang close ako sa mga Pilipino doon, lalo nga sa bata, yung mga mami nila, ganun. Pero something happened kasi sa company. And then, di ko na rin lang sasabihin yun.
Pwede sabihin. Kasi yun yung reason na lumipat kami.
Reason then, di ba? So, something happened, di ko na lang banggitin, and then, kailangan nga namin lumipat ng ibang lugar kasi syempre, pag wala kang trabaho dito sa Australia, wala din silbi na nandito ka. Kasi like what I said a while ago, kumbaga, yun dito yung pangarap mo. Dito mo makukuha yung pangarap mo. Kumbaga, nandito yung pera eh. Lahat naman siguro tayo kailangan ng pera, di ba? So, yun. Parang, no choice, kailangan din lumipat ng lugar. Nung pumunta kami ng halos wala talaga kami kilala. And then, ang nahirapan pa kami kumuha ng bahay noon. Kaya kay Kuya Ferds kami tumira. Yung kapatid.
So nandito na si Kuya Ferdy?
Yes, nandito na siya noon kasi hinahabol niya yung niya. Parang dito kasi siya nakaharap ng trabaho noon, tas malapit pa sa anak niya. So dito siya napatira. Pero kailangan din namin makalipat ng bahay kasi nung nasa Kilcoy ako, inoperahan ako sa tenga noon kasi nagkaroon ng infection yung eardrums ko. So kailangan ko magpa-surgery. And then, yung bahay ni Kuya Ferds, kaharap siya ng train. Yung tambakan ng mga uling ba yun? Yung charcoal.
Okay.
Hindi siya pwede sa sobrang ingay. Yung ingay ng vacuum, sobrang malakas na siya sa akin. Yun. So, kailangan namin lumipat, which is napalipat kami ng Berghofer Drive. Yeah. Hindi naman ako nahirapan ng as in like katulad ng dati na 1 taon simula nung lumipat kami ng Australia. sa Philippines din to Australia. Di naman katulad nung ganun. Pero ganun din yung pakiramdam, pero hindi naman siya yung as in tumagal. Kasi mabilis din naman kami nakakilala ng Pilipino dito. Then hanggang sa lumipat niya sila Tita Nerissa, sila Tita Nelvi, which is galing din sila ng Kilcoy. Kaya medyo mabilis din naman naka-adjust. Pero iba pa rin talaga yung first batch ba? Yung first batch
First
sa
batch.
Kilcoy, oo.
Kasi most of it nandun pa eh.
Ang
sa Quezon.
pinaka mahirap na part lang kasi syempre yung nag-edad na rin, parang nag-grow na din lahat, parang nagkanya-kanya na ba, parang wala nang message na kamusta ka na, gano'n. Wala na yung tanungan ng kung kamusta ka na. Parang lahat na bago. Parang hindi, parang from a close friend, from a close friend, and then bumisita ka ulit dun sa Kilcoy, naging parang strangers na. Ganun. Kasi syempre parang babata pa rin naman noon eh. Tapos ngayon bigla yung mga dating kasama ko mga bata, mga dalaga. Like what I mentioned to Jordan and Kate a while ago before we come here. Sabi ko, parang nahihiya na ako kay JM.
Bakit?
Kasi sabi ko dati, sobrang close tayo. Tapos sabi ko, pero nung susunod na makita ko ulit siya dito, nung bagong move pa lang kayo, tapos nakita kita, parang nahihiya ako na, batiin ka ba?
Huwag kang maiyakin.
Oo, nasabi nila, ganun pa rin siya.
I don't even know how you were before, but I was like, I think it's
Ganun
still
pa rin
there.
siya, joker. Sa isip ko, namit na ba nila si JM? Actually, kinausap ko talaga sila about that kanina nung sinundo nila.
Okay.
Sabi ko,
Kasi actually, di ko din maalala kung ako dati ng ano eh.
diba? Pero parang mahihiya. Kasi dati siya talaga, sobrang bata pa niya. Bata pa talaga siya. Tapos, ang kabanding ko sila. Biruin mo, age ko, 17, 18. Pero kabanding ko, like 13, 14, 12. Kahit ngayon. Ay, sabi ko sana 18 years old ako, pero... no.
How old are you?
Kala ka na pinag-isipan mo pa yung response.
Actually, 27 na ako.
27. Hindi ka naman mga 27.
That's
Hindi nga. Jordan, she doesn't look like she's 27. Let's see.
26.
How old do you think I am before?
23.
Really? Oh, thank you. Maybe because of my height.
How old do you think I am?
I don't know. Same age with me.
21.
21, really? I thought you're older than me.
Is it like facial?
Because because of your beard.
Yeah.
Yeah, just show photos and or probably just pop in the camera just to show them the reason
If
why.
you don't already know,
Yeah,
that's what I look like.
That's the reason. No, actually, 27 na ako. Then, yung mga friends ko, like, below 27. Like, how old are you, Kate?
24.
24. Jordan.
22.
22.
20.
20. See? Below 27. All my friends like below 27.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I know.
You're like a friend.
The woman was too stunned to speak.
Go along that route. I was gonna say like a big sister, and then that word came out. I'll probably have to bleep that out. But,
It's like the values and beliefs of
Because-
the best
That's
of
why
the
everyone used to call me ate.
yeah, like, keep it now. I mean, but that's what it felt like. Kasi pa naghahang out tayo, like, remember we used to go to when it was summer, pool tayo
Yeah, pool.
lagi.
Lagi kami nagpo-pool. Ewan ko, kasi siguro yung age ko lang yung tumatanda. Pero yung isip ko, pwede naman yung isip bata. Like,
Oh.
ano ba, yung parang, mas close talaga ako sa mga young, yung mga minor or mga, like, younger than me.
Kasi kung lagi ka lang adult, it will get boring for a while.
Actually, halos konti lang ata, bilang lang ata sa daliri ko na may ka-close ako older than me.
Right.
Or same age with me. Yeah.
Oh, nga.
Yeah, most of my close friends like younger than me.
So, Jen, how old is your ass?
Ah, you're the same age.
There
with
you
me.
go. Uh-huh.
Yeah, same
Stick it
age.
to us,
with
stick
me.
it to us.
Actually, ayaw niya na binabanggit yung age niya.
Uh-huh.
Last time first time na na-met ko siya, I asked him like, how old are you? And then he was like, how old are you first? And then sinabi ko sa kanyang age ko, pinabata niya yung age niya. Sabi ko, okay.
As long as he's not 17, it's okay.
And then I saw his license.
Oh,
And
right.
I was like, you're older than me.
ID check.
Like just a month. Like, because he was born like 11th of September and then 1994. And I was like 1995.
Oh, year.
Actually, yeah.
1 month? No. Oh,
Actually, yeah.
There.
Because September and then, sorry, I'm not that good at math.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Cut that one.
Sige lang, we'll show like Filipino flag.
Oh, that's joke only.
You told me that you're competing
Yeah, we're competing.
for math. Like you're like one of the best.
Yeah, I know, but
math.
with that, yeah, we all of us, like my brother, even MJ,
Oh.
we used to compete like in mathematics. Like we used to play Sudoku. What's that? Scrabble, chess,
Solitaire.
Dama.
Ah.
Yeah.
I'm just like remembering now kasi I used to
Even in the, ano ba yung yun, yung sa Oki, yung parang ano tawag doon, yung pag may mga game, sports.
yung
diba?
Independence Day.
Independence Day ba yun?
I think so kasi
Yeah, every time na may mga dama, chess.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that's
Independence Day because
Sometimes I used to join. Or sometimes nahihiya ako kasi lagi man talo. Pagka kasi yung hustler na yung mga kalaban parang. Ako, like, nahilig lang akong maglaro ng dama pero never ako nag-win.
Wala nga, di ako marunong magdami.
Nag-win lang ako pagka baguhan yung kalaban. Pero yung mga kapatid ko, yan, magagaling sila sa mga board games. But when it comes to like mathematics, computing things, yan,
Tadya kayo.
present kami dyan.
Yes. So,
Pero yung math, medyo nalito ako doon. Yeah. So, i-cut mo yun.
Ikaw,
Okay, let me see. What would you say something that changed you nung nandito ka na sa Australia? Like personality-wise.
Like, may gusto sana ikwento kaso parang, ano ba to? I-upload ba to?
Oh, this is going up like in 2 seconds.
actually live tayo. Hindi, joke lang.
We'll upload this as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Like,
Sa YouTube.
i-upload mo to sa YouTube.
YouTube.
And
Sa
Facebook.
USQ-FSA.
And tagging you.
Oh my God!
It's gonna be called Ate Jen, the first Tagalog episode.
Special Filipino conversation with Ate Jen.
Ate Jen likes underage. So she's like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, we won't probably go along
Something
that
na
route.
personal. Kasi involve yung ano ko mga tiyahin ko kaya parang ayoko.
Just something na develop mo, something na
No, we want your
nagkaroon ka ng
darkest
more
secrets.
confidence.
Huwag mo na i-mention pa nga dali.
Alam din nila yun.
Tanga rin ah. About sa kanila.
Mention, alam nila yun. Ano ko na lang, ikwento ko na lang sa inyo yung first time na pumasok ako sa Australia, sa school.
Sa school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How was that?
Kasi nga, Asian.
Mhm.
And then, ayaw nila sa Asian. Nung
Which school did
which
you
is,
go?
alam niyo yan, di ba? Kilcoy
school?
State
Kilcoy.
High School.
Yeah, like kahit na
Mention ko na. Sino man kayo?
Kilcoy's high school sila.
No, nakaranas ako na makipag-away sa school, actually.
Wow.
Sabunutan talaga.
Oh my goodness, really?
As in, sabunutan like.
Yeah, like, I don't know what it was. Kung anong problema ng school.
Like,
Yeah,
first day.
kasi, hindi naman sa pag-anha, kasi ano ba, parang,
We were
not
not.
all,
Not all.
but, yung iba kasing,
Racist.
racist. ayaw
all
nila
mammals.
sa Asian. They don't like Asian.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some of them.
they hate Asian.
Out in the regions.
But I don't understand. Bakit? Why?
Yeah, I don't know why.
It's like we're not doing anything. And then they keep saying like, kasi yung pera namin
Pupunta
parang
sa...
pumupunta sa inyo. Like, you're bringing,
heck?
like,
Hindi mo pwede doon.
you're bringing our money
Yeah, you're stealing...
to your, like, stealing everything.
Yeah, it's interesting. They're
But
like,
we work hard for that.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
they
right.
say like, oh, foreigners, they come and steal the jobs.
They always
But
say,
then-
go back to your country.
Yeah,
They tell
actually...
it to me too.
Really?
Yeah,
Actually, that...
Where are you from?
I'm not from anywhere, but they just because
I'm not from... He's not from...
I'm a Muslim.
Ah, yeah?
Yeah, so I have like
You look Australian.
I am Australian, but I'm a Muslim too.
Ah,
But
okay.
people just tell
Oh,
me to
fuck,
go.
I just realized how did you?
Actually...
Yeah.
When they told me
You thought he meant Arabic, huh?
Right.
Yo, fuck.
I was just shocked because when they told me that too. You're not Australian.
No. Like, well, what they say like about immigrants, like white people, they always like immigrants. Oh, just want to take money and just be lazy.
Yeah,
But
they
also
always say like that.
immigrants are gonna take everyone's jobs.
You
So
know
it's-
the worst thing? The worst thing when I go to high school, and then Filipino, they used to bring like lunch
Yeah.
to school, and
Yeah.
then we used to sit like under the tray.
Yeah.
Wala naman kasi yan, there's no canteen there, like you used to sit like something like. So you used to sit under the tree, and then even you guys, you
Oh
do
yeah,
that.
because
And
like...
then you used to eat there, like you bring some rice and then like the
yeah,
meat that you
ulam,
want.
Yeah.
We call it like ulam, and
Or
then
side dish. I think.
there's a racist Australian guys, like group of guys. They just go with us, and then out of nowhere they just say,
fight them.
"Hey, why you eating dog
Actu-
shit?"
Yeah, actually,
Really?
It's like
interesting.
you're eating, and,
And
then
now they all eat sushi.
why are you eating dog shit?
Yeah,
Wow.
What the
absolutely.
heck?
Just
Oh my
appalling.
god.
That's
Baby.
the first time like I cry because
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like you're angry, but you want to hold your
Yeah, yeah, and
Angle.
You
yeah.
have to hold it back because
You have to hold it because you're at school.
Yeah.
And then that time we just cried like a crying baby. Like I don't know. It like too much emotions, and then they told me like to go to the office for
Mm.
guidance, something like that, to talk about that.
yeah.
And then even they talked to them already, they still doing
They
the
still
same.
do it. That's right.
They never change.
Yeah, and that's why like fights started to happen in high school, because when I was there, it like I used to think that it you know, parang it became a tradition.
Yeah.
Now someone like a group of Aussie kids will try and challenge us.
Does that
Yeah.
happen to you too?
That's happened to me like from when I entered high school until I left at year 11. Every year we had
Because
a
for
fight with
them,
someone.
like
what-
Asian is like they challenging them
That's right.
when it comes to academics,
Yeah.
something like that. Because most of the Asians, they get the
Better.
highest grades,
Yeah.
something like that, and then it looks like they get jealous or something,
Yeah.
Yeah, but
and that's why they always say, you guys go back to your country, something like that.
Yeah, they actually one time when I was there my last year, they actually scraped it on the bench where we hang out. Go back to Philippines,
Yeah.
you know. But we tried our best to hold it
To
anger.
hold it, yeah.
Yeah, and I just went to them because I knew that I was like, you spelled Philippines wrong, you bitch. And then I just,
Tell them to go back to England.
it's like, yeah, it was just it's.
Next I say, go back to primary.
That's right.
I thought, Jan, I was dumb as shit. I still got bullied.
No.
My school.
I got fucking eased.
Good thing about my school, Harristown, it was not racist. It was like
Oh, that's
some
good.
people were, but if you
Yes, it
were,
fucking was.
no. What? How?
Alright, that Joe motherfucker was bullying me and like touching me a fucking ass.
Who?
Fucking
Jesus.
Joe.
So I smashed his back against the sink.
One guy.
Yeah.
One guy.
And
Naka-witness ka ba nun? Yung full out na away talaga sa high school nun?
I'm the one who make the away.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I'm the one who make the fight.
Yeah, so you
No, because actually it's like this. There's one guy like my classmate.
Mm.
Look like he kept asking me out,
Mm.
and I was like, I don't date Australians. Something like that. And then that guy has a girlfriend.
Oh.
And then he wants to ask me out. And then that guy's like lower level.
Right.
Like lower class. Something like that. I think year 11 and I was like year 12 that time.
Right.
And then she found out, the girl just found out like the guy asking me out. And then instead of talking to her boyfriend, she just fight to me, something like that. And then geography teacher, so
Mr. Clay?
yeah, Mr. Greg,
He's still there. He's Mr. Clay. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
and then Tagalogin ko.
Tagalog naman. Mix ko. Ako na magsalita.
And then nag-ano siya, dumating, umalis siya noong time na yon. And then biglang pumasok yung babae. Ayoko nang sabi pa ako nung name. Pumasok
Kailangan hindi naman nilang papanood.
Yeah, believe it or not.
babae. They don't understand. Okay.
Rather you just have to watch the subtitles.
Yeah, pumasok si Montana, and then sabi niya, parang hinanap niya ako dun sa alam ko naman na siya yun. Parang sa boses niya, alam kong siya yun. And nung time na yun, di ba pag walang teacher, parang may pinapagawa, like pinapasagutan, something like that. And then, she just kept talking to me sa sa front ko. Pero parang ini-ignore ko lang siya. And then, she just slapped my pen. Out of nowhere, she just slapped my pen. And then, what I just do is like pick it up and then write again. Looks like just, like I ignore her. Something like that. And then, she do it again. And then when the teacher just come, she ran away. But I think that time, like, kailangan umuwi ni Sir nung time na yun. So, magkakaroon kami ng substitute teacher, which is the chemistry teacher. Si Sir Rose, something like that. Chemistry teacher.
Chemistry. Ang wala kilala ko.
Yung matanda na ano din.
Parang wala, di ko ata siya. Alam ko na eh.
Tapat ng room ni, ng geography.
Parang,
Rosen? Si Sir Rosen?
Ang nakilala ko doon ng chemistry teacher, si Miss Wadley.
Natawag.
Baka nag-retire na siya.
Yeah, so yeah, he's old already, yeah. So, siya yung in charge sa amin, but may klase siya sa kabilang class. So, parang sinisilip-silip niya lang kami.
Right.
And then, pumasok uli yung Montana, and she do the same again. She just slapped my pen. And then, parang nagsawa na siguro siyang anuhin niya ako, umalis na siya. Kaso, parang sumabog na. Ako naman yung tumayo at ginrab ko yung hair niya and I'll pull it down. And then doon na kami nag-rumble.
When she left the room or as she was leaving the room?
She's going to leave the room. Yeah, I just stand up on my chair and then I just grab her hair and then pull it down. Yeah, that's why everyone was and then the teacher from the other room just tell us go to the office now.
Yeah, like talagang it was next level.
And then what's funny, it's like every break time.
Yeah.
Kasi halos sabay kami ng break nung sa girlfriend niya tsaka. So, nakasandal siya sa pader and then every time na dadaan ako, magkakasama kami nila Shynet no, yung mga Filipino friends ko. Every time na dadaan ako, automatic magkikiss sila. Then pagbalik ko, magkikiss ulit sila. Basta dumaan ako sa harapan nila, magkikiss sila. So sabi ni Shynet, Tol, try mo nga dumaan pabalik-balik. At tapos try mo magstay dun sa mismong, yung tabi mismo nila, sa tapat nila. So, naglakad-lakad ako, then ginawa ko naman, balik-balik ako. Which is talaga napansin namin, every time na magpasa akong ganyan, magkikiss sila. So, bumalik ako sa gitna, nagstay lang ako doon. Yun, nag-sweet-sweet na. And then, tawa lang kami ng tawa. Then, nagalit sila. Sabi niya, bakit daw sila pinagtatawanan. And then, after nun, nag-break yung parang semester break.
Right.
Like 2 weeks ba yun? 2 weeks na off na school. Nung pagbalik ng school, after nung school holiday, pagbalik ng school, parang, syempre, kailangan, blooming. And then that time, he asked me out again. But he's still in a relationship with that
Jeez.
girl.
Why would he do that?
I know. And then, you know what's funny? It's like, Miss, a biology teacher.
Is Matay?
No, the other one.
Miss...
Major chubby chicks.
Oh, shit. I know her. But
forgot. I'm not sure if you know her.
I think I know. Chubby.
Yeah, chubby chicks.
Sorry, I don't remember. It's been like.
Yeah, it's like
4
biology
years.
teacher, and then
Anything else besides chubby cheeks?
with the chubby chick, I forgot their names. It's like
No hair
Really
color,
long years
nothing.
the one that always have like a ponytail like that, and then with the chubby chicks here.
Ah!
I forgot her name.
Oh shoot! Continue. I forgot. I'm sorry, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I just forgot the
The
name.
name, me too. I forgot the name. And then, sabi niya, ano daw, parang may pinakuha siya sa akin gamit dun sa nila, office. Yung parang, yung parang faculty.
Yes,
room.
stuff.
Yeah. And then, so kinuha ko. Pagbalik ko, may nakasulat na sa board, yung naka-whiteboard na. Yung parang nag-aaya siya ng date. Kasi wala pala yung teacher doon umalis. Which is, hindi ko alam kung saan nagpunta. Tapos, nung bumalik si Miss, dali-dali niya pinawin yung writing sa board. Nakarating na naman kay Montana.
Ay.
Which is, ako na naman yung inaway niya. So, nag-report ako sa office nung time na yun. Sabi ko, hindi ako pala away, pero if it is always like this, I might do something
They always
Like,
say that shit.
they will not like.
Yeah, like even like with us, we always tell, because whenever we get into fights every year, we'd always tell that the teacher that, just talking to them and suspending them
Yeah.
does not do anything.
Yeah, even you suspend them, they happy with that one. If they get suspended, they're happy.
Yeah, it's because it's like
That's
a
why
holiday.
they keep doing it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why they keep doing it, because they're happy, like, getting suspension.
Yeah.
So parents are not helping.
Yeah. Looks like they get a holiday.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why they don't change. They never change. And then actually they change when there's lots of Filipino there already.
Oh yeah.
Kasi we get a group of Filipino. Sobrang dami namin.
You're like an army.
And then we used to join like dance troupe. Any activities at school, lagi may Filipino.
Yes.
So like we become friends with too many Australian already. And then and then when we become friends with most of the Australian there, every time they bully us, they fight with they fight for us.
You have the
Yeah,
good
they fight.
whites.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
because
fight with
they're
us.
white.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's why they stopped bullying
Just like
us.
Rowan.
And then after the fight, those bullies will become friends with us.
Yeah.
Because they become scared.
Exactly, yeah. After the fight, after what they did to us,
Yeah.
they become our friends.
That's right.
Oki was like this.
Okay, what's like that?
No, I'm asking you.
Oh
Are
well.
you talking about Oki?
Oh,
Or are you
no,
still
hi,
talking about
Kilcoy. I mean,
No.
with Oki, I don't know. Like,
I wish I went to kill Clay.
No, okay, it's no worse.
is it worse?
Yeah, I didn't go to school. Like I didn't study at OK, but
Hey, shout out to
I was a
Kilcoy.
teacher aide.
How are you?
Yeah.
Huh?
Same in Kilcoy, nag-teacher aide
the
ako sa Kilcoy.
Yeah.
Then nag-teacher aide ako sa OK, and I got bullied
Right.
because of my height.
Oh.
I mean,
Dinala nila ako sa primary,
yeah.
and then actually primary yung pinaka ko, but they put me in high school.
Right.
Out of nowhere, they just put me in high school. And then someone asked me, Miss Jennifer, are you sure you're a teacher? You look like a student. And then put
Yeah, it's fucking
Yeah.
annoying.
That's disgusting.
on the top of my head. I was like, are you sure? Oh, you look like just a child. Or
I always
something.
punch motherfuckers. who
And I
annoys
always
me.
do this to me, which is I find it rude.
Yeah, I punched him.
I understand if we're close.
Yeah, that's right.
I understand because some people
No.
they used to do this. Oh,
Not even if close.
I mean, I mean,
okay.
Get punched in the fucking throat.
we'll
Seriously,
we'll
I'm
never.
gonna punch their faces.
fuck.
Yeah,
Kill
like
him,
we'll never tease you about your height.
Exactly.
We love you.
Exactly, but you know, like you see your reactions, guys.
Yeah, it's
Like you guys like,
bully.
I'm gonna punch you.
No, like I actually fucking do it.
Yeah.
That's actually how fights start
But
back
the
then.
thing
right?
is, I'm at like a teacher aide, and you need to hold it again.
Oh gosh.
You can't speak like bad words to them. Even like you say shut up. You got
What?
I
I
wanted
got a
to-
teacher who told me to get my shit together.
no,
Oh,
no,
Jesus.
no, you're not, they're not allowed. We're not allowed to say that one.
Mr. McGrath.
I wish I was like high school
well-
and I would just say
I think it was because I think it was because he was leaving. So.
I wish I could do that.
When you sent me that shit in the fucking group chat.
But yeah, and then that time it keeps having like that. I keep reporting it to the office, but they can't do anything. Especially they find it like small thing.
That's not
something
fucking
that.
small.
Like for them, it's like it's not that really bad. But because you don't understand, like you don't know how it feels, like to get
Exactly.
bullied like that. Even just small things, like it's offended. It's like tapping you like that, like a dog, patting you like a dog. And then something like put it like that, like you look like you're a desk or something.
Yeah, that's really
think-
insulting.
yeah.
No, I can't even.
So I decided like to stop teaching.
Mm.
I told them like if they will put me in high school, I rather stop teaching.
Mm.
Especially lots of high school students in Okie is like taller than me. It's like some of them is like I'm just here,
Mm.
and everyone's like tall.
What I hate about high school students is how tough they can act, but when it comes to actual confrontation, they just back away.
That's right.
Nothing related to the.
That's right. When it comes to competition,
Nah, they're back
then
up.
you're like
Just for the ones who actually like challenge us to fight, because we'll be like,
I don't know. Maybe it looks like they just lack of love with someone.
No, fuck that.
Lack,
They're just
like
bitches, man.
lack of family oriented,
family,
something
yeah,
like
like-
that.
But it's
Like-
not always like that. They're just
So,
bad people.
maybe
It's different.
maybe kasi they
Look like they're getting like how do you call that one? Like
maybe they don't get enough like love
attention.
from attention.
Yeah, attention from others.
Or maybe they get-
yeah, that's
they
why
get
they're showing
treated
up.
horribly.
They keep showing up.
Yeah, they keep getting treated horribly at home, so they
Yeah.
release that anger at school, and
Yeah, it's possible, but
It's
come
not
on.
always the case.
They're not like really young to act like that. Something like that.
It's interesting though, kasi kami ni Jordan, we went in the same high school.
right.
Yeah,
Pero
but
hindi ako nabully.
different experiences and shit.
Hindi ako nabully. Pero si
I
Jordan.
had to break some kid's ribs.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, because like he was a nerdy kid, right? But like he started getting cool with the popular kids, and so he was like calling me Asian and shit. So I tripped him over and I started stomping his fucking ribs until they broke.
Gosh.
Yeah, but
Oh
guess
my
what?
What, like,
How I wish I could do that.
Yeah, me too. Like
There's no
gosh.
other Filipino there besides that girl. There's two other Filipino.
Yeah, there was one
There's
girl that I
only
grew up with.
5
But
of
she,
us.
yeah.
And then all of them are
in the
white.
whole school?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's only 5 Filipino and and some Brazilians. Oh, Lucas
A
and
lot of Brazilians.
all other Brazilians.
Actually,
But-
all the Brazilians left when you left. For some
Oh yeah, and then
fucking reason.
one Japanese, one Chinese. It's very limited of us. But
None
I
of me?
didn't get bullied. Huh?
Nanami,
None of me.
the Japanese girl. You're talking
No,
about.
Yuri.
No, so
Something like that.
Kilcoy, but
Sounds more
did you have any like like them?
They
Like,
do. We
did
do
you
have
have any- do you
exchange
remember?
students, but we don't
Sure.
have. We
kung
only
may
have
mga
one.
None of me
Japanese.
was there for
Brazilian,
ages.
ano.
Wala naman. We're an Australian.
Yeah, it's just
In
wow. That's
Kilcoy-
interesting. Yeah, because in
There's
Kilcoy,
there's no Brazilian. I
Yeah.
didn't met like Brazilian one.
Yeah, well,
Actually, here lang sa OK ako nakamit ng Brazilian.
in like
Yeah.
There's a lot of Brazilians.
Brazilians are our only Latino. We need Mexicans now.
Yeah.
Hey, come over, guys.
actually
Please.
that's interesting because when we were in Kilcoy, it's just Filipinos and Australians. We
Yeah.
never really
But why-
experienced
Yeah. Just
I
Filipino,
guess
Australian, and maybe 1, 2 Chinese.
the occasional Chinese.
1, 2, 3, yeah.
Pakistan had like everything. It was like Arabs, Pakistani,
Yeah.
Indian,
No, that's interesting.
Indonesian, Malaysian, Singaporean,
That's probably why
Filipinos, lots of Filipinos.
Harristown is the only school where I didn't stab someone.
In Kilcoy at school.
Harristown is
Literally.
In Kilcoy at
Now I
school.
think about it.
When I first studied at Kilcoy,
I thought
looks
you
like
know-
Australian is the boss.
Australians.
It's the boss. They act like a boss.
Oh yeah.
How they bossy, something like that.
Sorry, man.
I don't know.
Jordan was a good kid in Harristown.
Yeah, because I don't know.
He was a good guy.
Are you sure?
Yeah, no, legit, because
Yeah, Harristown, yeah, definitely.
But
Every-
he's so mysterious. He's so like quiet and mysterious.
because I was alone in like most primary school and high school, right? I didn't have any close friends until like Harristown.
Keanu.
No, Keanu never went to the same high school as me.
But he never talked to me at school.
Oh,
We never talked.
that's
I
not you.
I saw you every weekend.
That's not you. He never talked to
I
me
didn't need to
before.
talk to you at school.
No, he talk a lot.
I don't need to talk to you at school if you're at my house every weekend.
But even at your house, we don't.
Yeah, I'm in my room.
So introverted, like really,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, it was only like as I got to know Jordan longer, I just realized. Yeah, because when we first met, he seemed to be this guy who's like
How do you guys met?
in a meeting
Yeah.
with the FSA
Yeah.
at Kuya Rick's house
Oh.
because Kuya Marge and Kuya MJ kept on texting me the week before. It's like, when you should come to this meeting. And I was like, yeah,
okay.
maybe. Then he texted me again on that day. He's like, yeah, come to this meeting 4 p.m. I was like, okay.
Okay.
So I went there and
It's
it was
It's too hot now.
yeah, no.
Yeah.
It was him and James sitting together,
You need help?
and then I was the quiet one because I was still like trying to test the waters. Yeah, he was trying to test the waters, and then he just started. James and him just started to talk to me, and then yeah, I think
It's because you have a lot of love.
But you know what? I realized something. Sorry, it's a bit out of context. Pero kasi meron akong twins.
yeah.
Maybe because I have a twin.
Mm.
That's
No,
probably
I
why.
grew up with twins.
Actually, I met her on the party, like
Yeah, I
their
brought her.
birthday,
I brought her.
but I never talked to her.
But I was saying,
No one wants to talk to you, babe.
I like to
Actually, I think I remember when I first met Kid. I was quiet as well.
I talked to you the first time I met you.
Yeah, there you
Oh,
go.
what was that there? That the break the cycle.
Someone wants to stop saying that.
Finally. I love talking to people. But yeah, they thought we were Japanese because we had a really long hair. Me and my twin.
Right.
And really, so
No.
they
And
call
then
us
your eyes is
Japanese.
like this.
They always say konnichiwa.
We have to blend that out there. I mean, it's fine with us, but the public.
Racist.
Can you get inside this one? I mean, like, I love that the context is not for like the, it's not the wrong purpose, but it's okay with us, but probably the one
other
who's gonna see this,
Just cut that one.
no, probably just blur.
Zoom in.
I'll do that. I'll zoom in.
Oh my god.
And then,
No, it's true though.
And then across it'll be like the values and beliefs of Jennifer Cruz.
No, actually, all Asians look like that.
That's why, even me.
See?
Yeah.
Even me, especially when I laugh.
Yeah.
There's no more eyes.
It's just gone. Even you too, babe, with your big eyes.
Yeah, even if you
I mean, for me, I don't have to
it's
smile.
Asian,
You
when
have
they
eyes.
laugh,
I'm actually legally
Jen,
blind.
even he don't laugh, he's like that.
That's why, like at KFC, they always say if I'm awake or not.
And you're
No, usually I make those jokes.
Oh,
And they're like, you can't say that. I'm like, I'm Asian, I can.
exactly, I'm Asian. I have that eyes too.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Low-key, they did kind of look like exchange students, because like they were like the only two girls that would wear their skirts down to here, like you're meant to.
I did that before.
Okay, not any better.
All of them are like above the knee.
No, actually, I did that before
Above the knee.
in Kilcoy. First time at school ko, yung socks go just like this.
Not the socks, the
The
skirt.
scarf.
No, in mine is socks. Like, you know how Filipino, like at school, they used to have the socks like
Oh,
that.
like a...
And then they laugh on it.
No way.
They say you need to hide your sock.
Oh, because like you have like we.
You know, like we Filipino, like we used to have socks here or like around here.
I always
So
fold
you
mine
need to
up.
hide yourself.
Yeah.
For the guys, you
In
wear
Kilcoy
like
it's like that. In
Like you pull it all
Kilcoy.
the way up to like there.
And then
Yeah.
the funny thing is
For
like in Kilcoy, our clothes, like our uniform is like how do you call like that? Because we're wearing shorts.
Yeah, that's
And
it.
then a polo shirt.
It's it's this. It's this. But imagine this is maroon and
Yeah.
this is it's
It's
cool.
short, yeah.
This is actually my Kilcoy State High School outfit.
Sure.
And ours is just like this. And it was look like a janitor.
I don't know if you can. I want to ask you this because I don't know how many shorts that I've ripped from Kilcoy State High School. Did you ever have like an incident? Because I remember we were playing handball once and then
Yeah.
this thing
No,
just
never happened.
and I had to tie my
Oh
jacket
Yeah.
around my waist. Just, yeah.
No, it never happened to me.
Lucky you.
No, don't worry, same man.
So,
No, but it was for formal pants.
oh, it's a formal pants.
Yeah, because I was riding my bike, and then my
Right.
pants were like on the side, and then
I hate that. And the face you make when you realize you're like,
Oh my god.
and then you just like try and like feel it like you're in denial, and then when you actually feel your underwear, you're like,
Oh yeah, shit.
yes, I did it.
I need to go for it.
Yeah, I need to go with it.
and then I put the bag on my ass riding home.
We're out of the topic already.
I did that. I was jumping over a fence at the end of school because it was like exam block. So I jumped over a fence, but it was it was one of those fence with the wires that they cross up like that.
Oh, the
Caught
barbed
underneath.
wires.
It ripped my whole pants. I was just walking home like this.
I'm like,
Did you even cover it?
Yeah, I was holding it like this.
like I feel so like because you both of your situations is understandable.
Yeah.
I was just playing handball. I just did that, and then, I don't know why, but the entire like here from there just ripped open, like it was. I'm open for business. It was very embarrassing. Yeah.
That's never happened.
Oh gosh. There.
And
that Nagalag. Like imagine mo na.
Na-imagine ko playing handball and then just
it was a situation where I just had to not think and just just tie my jacket around my waist and hope for the best for the rest of the day. But yeah, with that Kilcoy, we did some very fun stuff. Like I remember where we used to go to Movie World.
Yeah. We used to borrow one van. Nag-borrow kami ng one van sa like KFC. KPC company. Kasi may one van siya na for worker. And then naghanap pa kami ng driver and then we used to go to Movie World.
So nice.
So just like Filipino
I
teens.
like it. I like the sense of community basta.
Yeah.
And the only reason that I went with them is because my dad was
Wait,
one
that
of
is the
the
driver.
Was the driver?
His dad was there.
So I came with my dad. We're like a package deal back then.
Yeah.
What with the
It
Arnold?
was really
Yeah,
fun.
with
Because
the,
all our
as-
friends really supportive
all the
with us.
Like my old dad.
Si Jordan,
teacher.
alam ko na Pilipino siya.
Uh,
Alam ko na Pilipino si Jordan, pero we never connected dun sa school. So,
Ah,
yung mga
yeah.
diversity dun, they're not connected. So, we felt kind of,
I
individual
guess.
talaga. Parang, hindi siya, wala siyang sense of community.
Right.
Talagang, masabi mo na, yes, you're both Filipino, you, do
Yeah.
something together now. It's like very separate. I don't know. Did you feel that way?
What?
Like in our school?
Yes.
How it's like all separate? Like, we're not really friends.
even you guys like both Filipino.
Yeah, because she was in a upper grade than me. But I remember because like I wanted the Asian community for so long. These Japanese exchange students came, and I got so close to them. And then when they left on the it wasn't them. And then when they left on the bus, I was crying so hard. And then I went into English class. I was like, and then they're like, John, what's wrong? I was like, my people are gone.
babe.
Oh my
Gosh.
Gosh, my people are going.
Yeah. When they graduated, it's like, okay. But then when the exchange students was like,
But actually, when we graduated, everyone was giving us a hug.
Oh.
Everyone from like year 8.
Yeah, and
So like
like
that's
they
how
used to
love
write
us.
something on your shirt as well, like on your
Mm.
uniform.
That's
I
true.
didn't get to
yeah.
experience that because I had to.
Really?
Yeah, because I had to move as I was turning 12 to Oki.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, so adjusting.
for you.
The only fun thing that I did in Oki was at that formal where my English teacher and
You
I
know
did
what's
a
funny?
jigot.
What I did, like they're going to put something on my shirt, but I bring Fernando's uniform.
What?
Oh,
Fernando's uniform because they're the same.
it was
I don't want to get ruined my uniform.
What if I
So
come
I
back?
bring Fernando's uniform to get signed.
Because yung all start diba may gray dito,
Yeah.
then maroon. Okay. So, yung kay Kuya.
yung sa kapatid ko hindi nila ko yung uniform. Kasi susulatan nila eh.
That's hilarious.
We look like a boy with that outfit,
Yeah.
with that uniform.
They changed it now.
Yeah, they changed it with a skirt eh.
May well, it's still shorts, pero yung shirt niya parang okay na siya
Permanent cut.
whether
May,
it doesn't
with the
matter.
ribbon,
Huh?
with the ribbon.
Well, yeah, that's the formal shirt.
Formal one,
That's
yeah.
the formal.
What
The
about
normal
that?
day one is there's no gray anymore. It's just
Ah.
all maroon. And
Okay.
yeah, it kind of looks better. It kind of looks better. Now it doesn't matter if you're
Yeah.
watching the
Because before, I really hate that uniform. When we go to school in Philippines, our uniforms look like we're going to university already.
Really?
We're wearing like a dress, all white with a necktie on it.
Yeah,
Oh.
sabi ay.
The ones in mom's area is like, it looks like the ones here. Yeah, low key. Like very formal with the
Yeah.
skirt and all that.
Philippines too. And we're just going to wear like PE uniform if it is like PE time. Or just one day like Friday only, something like that.
Oh yeah, that one day where you
Yeah,
technically-
you can wear your PE
Free
uniform.
dress. Oh, no.
That's what our private school's like. Australia in the private school, you wear
Is it private?
yeah, you wear the formal uniform every day except for one day.
Well, it's not really formal, the one in the Philippines. But yeah, that's and then one
I think
day.
I have picture with that one.
Yeah, if you
I show you.
one day there's a specific PE uniform which is like jogging pants and then
Yeah.
just a shirt with the
Oh,
school's logo on it. Then
Just a
that's what you
school
wear.
logo. Something.
Ours was once a week where we had to wear
Once a week.
sports uniform as well. Huh?
On Wednesday.
Yeah. Wednesday.
Well, we didn't really join sports. Like we were just doing choir. Like we were just singing.
In sports
But we were
uniform.
in a sport
I
uniform.
kind of like the TSHS uniform. It was like red with all those little stars on it. Harristown didn't look as nice, but Harristown was a better school.
I guess that's
Okay.
more diverse there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like it just, I don't know, I don't know, I never went to TS. Was it actually kind of nice?
These
there?
are uniform
No.
before in the Philippines.
Yeah, that.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Like a skirt.
That looks
one.
Japanese. Like, 'cause of
I mean,
the-
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
the sailor
That's my
collar.
graduation day.
is that?
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait, that's you?
Yeah.
Can we show that photo?
Show it, show it.
Kind of looks like a grown-up Angela.
Grown up.
And then I show you my uniform in high school. Here.
Hmm.
That's my uniform in high school.
Kilcoy, show them
Kilcoy.
Actually, I was
And
like,
then this
I'm
is-
gonna show them my.
This is my uniform, like the PE uniform in Philippines.
Mm.
Yeah, like white thing and blue thing. Yeah. And then I show you my uniform. Where is it?
Waiting in anticipation.
It's gonna be on the screen here.
Oh, that's the formal one.
That's my
for,
friend. That's a
for-
formal one.
For Kilcoy.
Actually, that was short, but we used to wear like slacks,
At the gym, is that you in the back?
like the black pants,
So you didn't wear because now.
because we don't want to wear that short. So We used to get like a pants, black pants.
So like slacks, but
Yeah, the slacks one. So
Oh.
it's more look good.
It's very similar.
Oh, Philippines.
so I'll show
See?
you the day
It looks like
uniform.
university
find
already.
this one.
Hey.
That's
It looks like the same, eh?
Similar to yours, hey?
Yeah.
That they have
Let's see
Instagram.
what
I want to show them the day uniform for Kilcoy.
Yeah, that's one Kilkoy.
Oh yeah, look at that.
That's shiny. That's my friends.
I didn't even realize this was Kilcoy. I thought you were showing us Philippines photos. My bad.
I thought that was just a vid.
No,
Oh, that's the
see?
hole.
If you
I'm
wear
just
pants,
reminiscing.
it's more looks good.
Mm.
This
Then
is
you wear
Kilcoy, though.
shorts
That's
like
Kilcoy.
under your knee.
Now they wear actual skirts now.
Oh, really?
For formal, yeah.
Oh, it's good then. See, we used to join like dance troupe in
Mm.
Kilkoy as well.
Mm-hmm.
Any event, school event, community event,
I'm scared of that.
even choir event. I don't know how to sing. They used to join me in choir.
I'm scared of that Ate might stumble into that old video of us dancing.
Do you want me
No, please no.
Play it on the screen.
No!
And meron kami parang Sailor Moon siya na na uniform
Right.
sa Philippines. Para siyang ganito. It looks like
Yeah.
Yeah, it's legitimately his sailor uniform.
Yeah, we see like more like this in my
So,
high school.
How come your high school just had weebs, babe? Weebs.
Yeah, like really short. It's not good. And
And then
It's
you
really
all
cute.
colored your hair, wore colored contacts. You always did this.
That's so
and
funny.
high socks.
At my age, look at my friends.
Oh, I think I know some of
Primary.
them.
Yes.
Oh, this
Look,
I
there's
wanna see
Angela.
that.
Angela. You, Angela. So that's.
I told Angela she looks
That's
exactly
a
like you.
primary one.
Can I
Oh,
see
look at
it
that. Yeah,
again?
I know half of them.
You will notice who's the Filipino.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the one, the three on the left.
With little brown faces.
Which one? Which one are you?
Which one is the Filipino one? Group of Filipino.
There.
Yeah, it's a group.
Yeah. That is nice. If I could.
That's all in primary, and I was like in high school. I'm friends with
It
them.
must be this one.
This month is that? I mean, is that the graduation for this?
And that's I think I'm not sure if they kind of like disco.
This
looks
looks
like-
like.
Oh right. Oh, I said did this.
Why,
Yeah, this.
why are they like so white? Like I swear there isn't like white people.
I know half of
that
Really
are
white.
consistently
Maybe
that-
because of the
That's
flash of the
Casey.
camera.
the
This looks like a
yeah.
2006 Teenagers magazine.
I can't. I don't know if we can show their photos.
At the gen.
Do you wanna see JM's dance?
Yes.
So how do you close this?
Can you block this phone?
I'm nervous now. No, I don't want to see what that. So, what was it?
I saw it already.
Did you?
Yeah, I
You
sent
sent
it. I sent
You
it
sent
to-
it to me.
So it was we were together. Yung dance. We were together for the first part, and then you had the boys
Yeah.
do like a girly dance. So we had.
Then, what dance is it again?
So we had. So the first one was.
For the girls dance.
I think it was Renz and John did
Yeah.
the I'm in love with you party
Yeah.
dance, and then I don't know how I danced.
You do that all about the
all about that bass by myself.
Yeah.
And then
Yes, I sent it to you, right?
And I slipped at the end.
Yeah.
Nadulas ako sa dulo.
I remember that one.
I remember asking
No,
you for
actually, I didn't
permission.
really like
You didn't?
snap. It just almost.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Almost
almost.
sleep.
I almost slipped. It was a close call.
Yeah.
It was very fun. So would you say, would you say na your experience is more,
It's really good.
it's really good?
It's kind of like mixed experience.
Mm.
Like there's part like I get bullied.
Right.
I met too many friends. Like our situations from the Philippines
Mm.
going to here, it's much big difference, something like that, and for good, something like that.
Good.
The only thing that didn't change is like how people from the Philippines thinking of our life here when we go back to my country.
Bro, they think we rich.
Yeah, they always think like we're like a millionaire.
That's right.
Looks like we're just picking up the money or picking up from the trees.
Just blow your nose and
Yeah.
in a $5 bill.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I wish I can do that.
I wish I could
Or
do
like
that.
you're rolling up.
I know, and yeah.
Promise I would be putting it in my pocket and saving it for
I saw
a
that
rainy
on
day.
TikTok. I saw that on TikTok.
And the thing is like
When I showed you about the money,
Yeah, exactly.
the
Yeah.
toilet paper, and
yeah. I saw that too.
Yeah.
I've seen that too.
That was-
Mhm.
it's funny.
My God.
But actually, after what like Filipinos thinking about it, like still like you still want to go back to your country,
of
like
course.
hoping like one of these years like I can stay back to my country. I don't. To be honest, I don't want to get old here.
Oh, you're gonna retire in the Philippines?
Yeah, I want. I even mentioned it to my boyfriends. Like I told him, like, you're Brazilian and I'm a Filipina, and then what about like we both don't like to like get old here in Australia, so when we become like if like we're really meant to be like a wife and husband. Where are we going? I'm not going to stay in Brazil. And then he was like, I'm not going to stay in the Philippines when I got old. It's like, okay, you stay in the Brazil, I stay in the Philippines.
When we're 60, we break up.
I've got the contract. Please sign here.
Until 60 years old, we're not together.
When it happens, okay,
I feel
bye.
like you're
Don't
just
be
gonna
bad.
end up-
Don't feel bad.
I feel like you're just gonna end up in Australia.
I know, that's what I was thinking too. And then he was like, or maybe we can do like, I stay in your country for like 2-3 months and then you stay in my country for 2-3 years. So I go, hey, that's not fair. You stay like in a month and then I will stay like years in your country.
Gosh.
What's the middle ground? What's like the perfect, you know?
Yeah, like
Which is Australia.
maybe get Philippines and Brazil and whatever's in the middle. Just stay
Australia
there.
is in the middle.
Oh, is it?
Hawaii?
Huh?
Hawaii?
Hawaii? Stay in Hawaii.
Brazil, Philippines.
Oh my god.
Like get a map. Whatever's in the middle. Imagine if it's like just the ocean.
New Zealand.
Because even you do you want to like to get retired here or something?
No, not really. I kinda love.
The money is here, the work is here, your dream is here,
Yeah.
but your life is in your
It-
own country. You will always go back to your country. Whatever happened, whatever experience you experience, and even
Are you
it's bad or
Australian
it's really
citizen?
bad, you will go back to your country.
But you're Australian citizen, right?
Yeah, I'm Australian citizen,
Does that mean you can't live there?
but I can do like
You can
dual
live.
citizen.
Oh, you can get dual
Dual
citizenship.
citizen, yeah.
That's what I'm
Yeah, if you're dual citizenship, but if you're
Yeah,
just an
yeah.
Australian citizen, then you can't live there.
Why
And
not?
I also can withdraw my citizenship if I want.
Yeah.
I
Just
can
sell
do
it to someone.
Just sell it on eBay or
$1 million.
Facebook Market. Just sell it on Facebook
I
Market.
don't know, cause for me, I feel
It's
like
kind of used. But it's cool.
What about you? Do you want to stay
yeah,
here?
I feel like this is more my home than Philippines.
Right.
Cause when I was in the Philippines, I was literally just at home.
Really?
Anyway, I never really experienced going anywhere.
Actually,
Mhm.
I was the same. Like
Mm.
I don't really like hang out with friends or like to go out, go to the places like beautiful.
Mm.
I live in Philippines like 16 years straight,
Yeah.
but I never go to like a tourist spot like Baguio. I just go to Baguio like when I come back, like after I get here and then go for holiday. That's the time I go to Baguio. But with the tourist spot, actually some of the Australian that I met, they said, hey, do you know this place is really beautiful? I was like, yeah, it's really beautiful there. I was like, oh, but I never been there. I just saw it on Google.
That's right. It's really
Yeah,
nice.
it's really good there. But on myself, it's like, I never been there. You're lucky you've been there.
I will retire probably in the Philippines. When I do, I'll probably live in where my province,
Yeah.
provincia.
Yeah.
I'll probably go because I used to live in Dasma, in Dasmariñas, Cavite, in the Philippines. I would probably choose to stay in my in my province in Rojas
Yeah.
because I just like I like the area there more and I like I like the area there more. There's a beach there you can go to anytime and stuff like that. and it's just more peaceful there than
Mhm.
than my other the Dasma, because it was I had a pretty hectic experience there. So yeah, I'd like,
Actually, with Kuya Jom and myself,
mm,
when we go here in Australia, even now, until now, we used to plan like having business in the Philippines rather than having business here. It's like, we plan this, when we go home, we like this, we plan, we have that one. But we never plan, maybe few years time, we have the restaurant here, we have that thing here. No, always in the Philippines.
always in the Philippines.
Yeah, we always plan in the Philippines. I don't know why. Maybe because like,
Maybe you feel more home.
yeah, in the
Philippines.
Philippines, yeah.
That's more than
Because I didn't feel my home because I've come in a broken family and I had no control whatsoever. Like everything is like controlled over my family. So I had no sense of freedom, no whatsoever. So I didn't feel home at all. Like I just felt like, oh, is this what life's gonna be forever? And I just got stuck there. But once I came to Australia, I had the freedom. I can make my own decision.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to have life. Like I said, I feel more home now. I have more. And then I thought, people are generally judgmental. Is that how they are? And then I didn't realize I was just in that toxic environment where people are judging you, whatever you do. Well, here they don't care about like what you're doing.
That's
like
speaking of freedom. That really is
That's
the
the thing
different thing. In the
gives you a
Philippines
sense
and
of
Australia.
independence. You can drive. You can go anywhere. You can, like there's no one,
No one
minding
will
your
judge you.
business.
no one did
It's
No
like,
one will
why are you
judge you.
doing that in the day? It's daylight, you
Yeah.
know. Why are you staying up all night? Like just literally whatever you
That's
do.
right.
There's always that one person that tells you, you're making a mistake. So
Yeah.
you're never gonna be comfortable.
That's right.
So when I came here, that's when I like, oh yes, I can be myself. I can experiment. I can have my own identity without someone telling me this is.
Why you
This
doing
is
that?
what
Why
you
you
should
doing?
be. This is what you should be doing. You should be a nurse. You should be, like it's just all controlled.
That's right. I'm kidding.
Wow, babe.
Actually, it happened to me too. Like,
Yeah.
because before when I was in the Philippines, I never wear shorts.
Mm.
Because in Philippines, when you wear shorts,
Yeah.
everyone looking at you. This one, I had this one. I was like high school, and then there's activity at the school, and then I accidentally like and then this one stay on my skin already, but my dad asked me like to put tattoo on it, but I hate needles.
No, it's cool. Do you wanna? I have a disposable one.
Disposable needle.
I did this with that.
Really?
Yeah,
That one's not needle.
it's needle.
Oh,
No,
I
she
hate
hates needles.
No, but if you do it yourself, it's not that bad.
No, I don't like it. Even
Come
I do it
on,
myself.
sige na.
Even I just saw the needle, I don't like it.
Well, it's this small.
I don't care, but it's this small.
But you just poke it.
Yeah.
You don't literally like
Yeah.
insert it. Like you poke it with the
Really?
needle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like how we do it in Philippines, it's poke, poke, poke.
It's
It's
like
not. I don't use a gun.
called stick and poke. You just literally poke it like a. Yeah.
Because the one that I saw, like when they put in tattoos, like zzz.
Yeah, I don't use a
that's
gun.
Like they're
tattoo
drilling
gun.
it.
That's a tattoo gun.
Ah.
Yeah.
That one hurts.
Mine is manual, so it's not that bad.
But
And then-
takes a
So
lot.
what I'm saying is like, and then when I wear like a short, they will ask me, how come you can wear short and you have that thing on your knee? That's the time like I don't wanna wear shorts or anything. I always wear like pants. But when I go here in Australia, I don't wanna wear pants. Even you guys, you barely like see me like wearing pants or something.
No.
Only like for going to
Always,
work.
always underwear.
Because
Like long pants.
yeah, the long pants, yeah. Always like shorts.
That's a joke. Go get to bed. Straight.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Long pants. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah, it's
always
just
get the
which-
short one.
People in the Philippines, they judge
Judge,
easily,
yeah.
and the thing is, unlike here in Australia, word gets around more quicker in the Philippines because everyone knows each other. It's a close community.
That's
Yeah,
true.
so they'll be like, "Oh, look at that! She's wearing that."
Too many gossip.
That's right.
That's when
She's
like,
small, so she's small.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Marites.
I felt felt so depressed when I was younger. I didn't even know I was depressed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Because like having that people judge
I
you
heard it,
every
I didn't- I
time,
knew
and I
it.
thought it was normal.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but it actually not normal. Like studying mental health for me really
Yeah.
made a difference as a person.
Mhm.
Why was it normal for me to get psychologically abused or manipulated or everything you do? Like I didn't realize because it's the environmental factor
That's right.
and how you've been raised as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I had life here. This is my home.
Actually, when I was in the Philippines, everything is bawal. Everything is not allowed.
Yeah.
Especially like I'm a girl, so everything's not.
Sexism.
Especially with my family because when we don't have Angela yet, my younger sister, when we don't have Angela yet, so I'm the only girl with 4 boys and I'm in the middle, and then every time someone will ask me out, even I was in the right age already, they will tell me, you should pass to me first before you pass to her. My brother used to say like that. And then in the Philippines, if you date someone at a very young age, they will say, this girl when she grow up she'll be like a prostitute. Something like that. They will judge you quick. And then if you get close, like if you're a girl then you used to hang out with guys, they will judge you as well.
That's cute.
Let me tell you a story. Sorry. In high school, there was this one guy that asked me like, "Oh, can you be my girlfriend, Kate?" And because my mom would always say, for my other sister, I was a bit older. It's like, "You're gonna get pregnant, blah blah blah. You're gonna get pregnant if you have a boyfriend." So that's what I told the boy. I was like, "I'm gonna get pregnant."
Just as you say yes.
I had even no idea how it works yet. I had no idea. I was so innocent. All I know is that if I have a boyfriend, I'm gonna get pregnant. So I would be telling this man, I would be like, "Sorry guys, I don't want to get pregnant."
I mean, KFC asked me out.
And then it's like, I won't get you pregnant yet.
I like that he said yet. It's definitely in the future.
Don't worry,
There's a
we're
plan.
just gonna be dating first. And I
You
was
have to
like,
say yes
"No."
first.
I was like, "No, that's not how it works. You're gonna get me pregnant." Because that's what my mom said,
Yeah, I know. We're so. Yeah.
Even my mom and dad. Sorry, mom and dad. I need to say this. I'm here in Australia, and then they told me if you turn 18, you can do whatever you want.
Oh shit.
And then when I turned 21, and then I asked them, I'm with my boyfriend. Oh, what? It's 7 p.m. already. You need to go home. And then a few days, he said, maybe if I miss my period, maybe you're pregnant. Huh? I said, what? I said, do you sleep with him? What? But because you go home late, and it was like 8 p.m. only, and then I go home late because before I need to be home like before 7. Yeah, because after 7 they'll think maybe you're pregnant, huh? Maybe something happened to you guys already. I was like, Mom, I'm 21. I'm not 13 years old.
And then they get even more insulted when you say that to them.
And then they told me, as long as you're here in my, as long as you're under my custody, you still need to listen to me. I was like, Mom, I'm not a young girl. I'm not younger anymore.
Yeah.
And then now that I'm 27, they keep asking, when are you getting married? When are you having baby? But before they said, maybe something happened to me already. Not yet, it's too early. Now they keep asking me to get a baby already. Not yet. And then I'm the one who's saying not yet. See the difference. That's the difference.
Yeah, it's more the Australia is more free than because when you're in the Philippines you're always under judgment from not just your family, but
Yeah.
the people around
yeah.
you, like your neighbors and stuff like that. Because especially if you're like in a barangay and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
and the thing with in Australia is like when you're in Australia, ano nga sasabihin ko? Nawala tuloy ako. Like, I can stop.
Intermission.
Wait. Loading. Nagsalita ka kasi kanina. Ano nga sasabihin ko? Nakalimutan ko.
In Australia,
And it's,
how's it in Australia?
yeah, how's it?
No, nakalimutan ko na eh. Even in Tagalog, I forgot what I'm going to say.
You can start in Portuguese now.
What
Oh god.
I forgot.
Don't worry.
I'll tell later when I remember. What did I say?
Talk about the freedom of the Australian culture is just much, it's just much less restricted.
Free from judgment
Yeah, and
from
judgment.
people.
Yeah.
Sabihin
No,
ko.
not that one. Another one.
Clothes.
The last.
Yung clothes.
Babies. You talking about babies a lot.
Yeah. With in
Diba mo
because
kalimutan?
in Australia it's like even it's like more ano ba tawag dun, yung parang advance ka sa mag-isip when it comes to like like yung more liberated or something liberated ba?
Yeah.
Parang mas,
Liberating?
mas free yung isip mo.
Yeah, like you're open-minded.
You're open-minded,
Like
Yeah.
you're what in Australia like more open-minded than Philippines, but my mom kept telling me what am I if I stay in Philippines if I didn't come in Australia, and I was like maybe I have 5 children already, or maybe 3, 4, because most of my cousin, almost all of my cousin, they're more younger than me, that they have their own family already. And I have brothers, even Kuya Jom, he's almost 30, but he don't have family yet.
He's got a kid.
No.
Oh.
Kuya Jom!
That's kuya. Right?
You believe that he has a kid? He told me like he tell it to the old kid like but nowadays he's in a...
Fuck you, Coach Anwar! I believed you for so many years! You fucking
He told me that before.
I was like, I was so
No,
sad!
He always told me that back then. Like I got bamboozled by kuya John. He used to tell me that he had
John Lloyd Marcos.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Sorry.
Kuya John, why do this to me?
You motherfucker saying you sent $300 a week?
No,
Fucking bitch.
no, actually the son that he's telling to them, Ate Nancy's son.
Oh,
What's the name?
that?
Isaiah?
Yeah, Isaac. And then he keeps showing Isaac picture to them.
This motherfucker.
I don't tell him, I tell you.
No, I'm fucking calling him.
No! Make him watch this one.
It made me sad. I was like, his son's over there, but you can't even see him, but he's sending that shit on the money.
No.
you motherfucker, go your drama betraying my trust, you fucking
But
bitch.
he treat him like his son
It
already.
doesn't fucking matter, it's not his son.
He just treat him like his son because he's like inaanak.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but
then technically that then.
he's not really
Godfather.
the real father or something.
I thought he had a twin brother.
No, yeah, that one too.
Wait, what?
He said to everyone that he has a twin brother. You know that like the apps, like you can have like a twin,
Yeah.
like a split video.
Oh, for X, all that bullshit.
I can't believe I got bamboozled by that.
Until now.
Until now. If Jordan didn't mention the son bit, I wouldn't have questioned, because I was like, yeah, the Kuya Jama had a twin brother. And then you said a while ago you had 4 brothers. What? Hang on.
The twin brother one didn't trick me because when I saw it, I went to work. I was like, Kuya, what the fuck's this?
No, actually, MJ and Kuya Jom, they used to like they thought like they're twin. I don't know the name, like Corey's brother. What's it, Corey's brother?
Ashley.
Yeah. He used to hug MJ before at the IGA,
Oh shit.
and he thought it's Jom. And then MJ was like, "Hey, what the fuck, bro?" Because he thought it was
Oh my god. Ashley's a good person now.
They always thought that they're twin.
They didn't look
A
that
lot of
much.
that happened to me. Okay.
Even
Oh, true.
Jayan.
Yeah.
He thinks like, until now he thinks like, Kuya Jom is
Yeah, I thought you had a twin brother. Can't believe it. Hey, John, why you do this to me? For
Okay,
years now.
shout out.
All the sympathy I gave you saying that one day you'll bring your son here. all the fucking tears I shed with you, motherfucker. Fuck you. So angry. Fucking bitch.
I can't believe I got scammed for nearly 10 years. But having a twin brother. We've known each other for like almost
I'm
10
sorry,
years.
Kuya.
Yeah, Joe, why you do this to me? Like, he even showed me a picture, yeah, at the end of the one, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, he has a twin brother.
I'm pretty sure I said some shit like, he looks just like you.
Oh, yes.
Fuck you,
Oh,
Korea.
oh.
He told me that about that one, about the son, like he tell to his friends in Oking. Like, oh, they know that I have son. So if they ask you, just say yes. So someone asked me that before. I think Marcus Vinicius.
Oh my fucking god.
Yeah, he asked me
Marco.
before about it, and then he said, yeah, but he's in the Philippines. Before Kuya Jom said he's just like making joke. But everyone believe.
Yeah.
So he just act like he have a son.
Yeah. We're gonna cut the video so it makes it look like he told us.
Yeah, okay. Three, just act like you, just act like you told us.
Oh my god,
Okay.
that's crazy. Oh, I know.
I like how it was a serious subject, and our reactions were just like laughing our asses.
To us laughing.
Just, Kuya Jom, we love you.
I love you, Koi. Actually, I genuinely love Koi.
Yeah, we love Kuya Jom.
Actually, with all my brothers, he's my really close friend.
Yeah.
As you can see.
Korea drama was angry at me when I first met him in Oki because I couldn't speak Tagalog. But then we got close anyway.
Kuya
I love
Jom.
Kuya
We love
Jom
Kuya
too.
Jom. Yeah, I thought you had a twin book. I really did.
Yeah, that one was kind of dumb, not gonna lie. The sun thing, reasonable. You believe in the twin shit? Where the fuck would he be? You met all the brothers.
No, because because I think they had at some point there was like a Facebook profile that was created
Yeah.
to act like the twin brother,
Also,
and I was like,
And then he put like the name John Lloyd
Yeah.
Mark Cruz.
yeah,
And
that's
then
right,
the other one is
Jomar.
Cruz, Jomar Cruz.
That's right.
yeah, the John one.
And then sometimes he log in the other account on the laptop and then he log in on the phone. So they're both online.
That's commitment.
Korea drama, you should work.
And then what's funny, like Jayan, one of our friends in Kilcoy, she asked Kuya Jom last time, before, like when we still live in Kilcoy, she was like, hey, are you Kuya Jom twin brother or you're Kuya Jom? And then Kuya Jom was like, I'm his twin. Finally I met you. And Kuya Jom was to laugh that time.
Korea drama is a piece of shit.
I said, you guys, I really look the same face.
Time. It's like 11 past 11, so we're going for 1 hour 42 minutes.
42 minutes.
1 hour and 42 minutes.
Wow, that
Really?
didn't feel like an
I
hour.
didn't feel like that.
It didn't feel like an hour and 42 minutes.
Oh yeah, it's 11 already.
Ah,
I didn't know.
we keep going on it.
Did you want to keep going? Or
Do you want to conclude it?
Oh, do you still have questions or something?
No questions. We're
Hopefully.
talking about your fucking brother. He's a fucking scam artist. God.
Yeah.
What else
It
do you
sounds
wanna-
like you blind a lot in Australia.
Yeah.
And,
Actually, I got like the word matured more
Mm.
here than Philippines. But if I'm going to choose, like if they will ask me which country I will choose to stay more, I'll be rather like choose Philippines than Australia. Like what I said, like my life is here in Australia, like with my dream, everything. My dreams, everything here, but my heart's still in Philippines. Yeah, even my family's here. Even them, they want to stay in the Philippines rather than stay in Australia. It looks like we just need to stay in Australia, but we want to stay in the Philippines. We just need here, but we want in the Philippines. Something like that. It's not much difference, but yeah, like that. It's just like I used to stay in Australia, but I will rather choose to stay in the Philippines. I just need to stay in Australia.
You know, I prefer being in the Philippines, but I don't know where I would retire. To be honest.
Yeah. What about you, Jane?
Well, yeah, like,
Same.
I'd stay in Rojas, my province, my provincia, because
The oysters.
huh?
The oysters.
Oh yeah, you could go to the beach,
But
get a
you
basket
rather
of
stay in
oyster.
Philippines too rather than Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I love. Don't get me wrong.
Hate.
I love Australia.
Yeah.
With that me being here, I wouldn't have met friends.
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met all of you guys. But yeah, like when but when I retire, I mean, it's not like I would never come back to Australia. I will come back
Yeah.
for like holidays.
It's just like, yeah.
I just wanna retire, stay in the Philippines.
Yeah, that's true. But Australia is great. Australia really changed our life, not just my life, my family's life, especially when it comes to like your financials,
Yeah.
something like that.
Sorry.
Dreams come true. There's too many people out in the Philippines, like they really want to travel in different countries.
Yeah.
To try their luck in different countries. I know like Philippines is one of the poorest country, but it's more fun there.
It's a tagline.
It's really more fun
You
there.
brought up just for the catchphrase.
It's more fun.
Like
1 hour 50 minutes.
For me, it's not about the environment. Like, it's not about the environment. I think it's the people. Like you can have some Filipino around here too.
Yeah.
And I do like diversity. Like, so I think for me, I would rather stay here because this is where I feel I belong. And
Yeah.
not the culture itself, but the environment.
Yeah.
But I do. I'm still a Filipino, and I'm 100% Filipino, and I love everything about the culture and how they love and how they're family oriented. I love all those, and I'm embracing it. It's just the environment.
That's
Yeah,
why
it doesn't subtract. That just because you want to stay here doesn't mean that you're not gonna be like Filipino. You're still Filipino.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
the Filipino.
It's not. It's not about where you live. It's about how you feel.
How you
inside.
feel it, yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like I have more control here.
Yeah,
Or I
that's
have more opportunity
yeah,
to
for
learn
sure.
and grow myself and develop myself to who I want to be,
Mhm.
rather than being controlled by someone or being expected to be what they want you
right.
to be. Because they have particular standards, they have expectations,
Yeah.
and kind of dictating your life. Like, what's your life gonna be in the next 5 years? Like here, they probably won't know like what's your plan for the next 10 years because it's totally up to you. While there, like it's pretty much scripted. I don't know.
Yeah, they do
That's
it for
just from what I gathered, but
you. They always say we know what's best for you.
yeah, rather than having your own say.
Actually,
So-
in the Philippines, I have too many like
Mm.
bad experience, but I don't know. Maybe it's just like with the heart already. Like even you have too many troubles, too many experience, bad and good. I still want choose like staying there.
I mean, I mean, if I'm being honest, me too. I especially I had most of my bad experiences in Dasma, so that's why when I go back there and retire, I want to be in the provincia Rojas, because that's when I first came to Rojas. After everything that my dad brought me there for the first time, it just felt different. It didn't feel horrible. It didn't feel like it just felt right. And that's that's where my heart. That's where my heart
Yeah.
is. Yeah, definitely.
That's nice.
Australia is really good. Australia is really good.
We love Australia.
Yeah, we love Australia. I think like Australia is just like, for me it's like, it looks like Philippines as well. It's just different people and yeah, but it looks like Philippines already.
You know, like, I don't think I can retire in Philippines because most of the people I love in Philippines would be dead by then. Because they're all older than me. They're like at least 10 years older than me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, minimum. And then a lot of my friends here are Filipino anyway. So it's like, that's kind of where my home is, you know. So I might retire here too, babe. We might.
Let's retire here together.
No, I'll be sticking around too.
JM, if you didn't come here in Australia, what do you think you'll be?
Samoan.
Do this, JM!
Baby, we're not
forgot
talking
what that
about
meant.
ethnicity. Like, are you talking about what's James' life gonna be?
No, he's gonna go there and become one of them, babe.
Like what he is now if he didn't go in Australia.
Or
Like,
if you stayed in the Philippines.
I would have been even more miserable than I am now. I probably, if I'm being honest,
yeah.
probably have to bleep this out of there. I probably,
Australia is really
I'll probably
important.
be.
That's right. Even us. Even us. Maybe even us, if we didn't go here in Australia, I think I'm working like in a fast food chain, or maybe in a palenque, something like that. Because before we experienced like washing the bottle of the soy sauce, bottle of oil, and one bottle cost like 50 cents. And whatever, how many bottles you wash, that's what you get.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like with one day you only earn like 20 pesos, which is not even $1 here.
No.
So I'll be like, Australia is really good. It really changed our life.
I don't know what I would be. Maybe pastora.
Kasi sa church lang ako nun lagi. Lagi lang ako sa home tsaka church. And then siguro I would be a worship leader or like a pastor, ganun. But I can't imagine any other things.
I would just be tribal, really.
Driver.
Because I don't know if I want to be on mom's side because it's too lazy.
Right.
But like Pa's area is like what I like a lot. I can do whatever I want. And like, ooh, and I got my tribal shit, so like it's gonna be complete, you know.
Let's go on.
Who knows?
That's why Philippines and Australia they both good. Good experience in a different way.
Yeah, that's right.
And with that, just want to thank you there for actually being our guest
You're
today.
welcome. Thank you as well for having me here.
I hope like in the future we could chat again.
Yeah,
This was really fun. It doesn't even feel
Yeah,
like
it didn't feel like it's like been almost 2 hours.
That's
now.
right.
We said it was gonna be pure Tagalog and then became English.
I think it's just because whenever.
I feel sorry because
Yeah, that's right. We just
like
kept
he's quiet and then I want him to understand.
Yeah, but you
too.
said that you want to be
That's why.
comfortable.
That's why even I don't know how to speak much English. I try my best. I'm sorry for my grammar. Just got it.
It's fine then.
Got
No
it.
one will judge you.
Yeah, that was like the best like practical like time I got to really understand
Even to
Tagalog.
her, every time I talk to her, sometimes I'm trying to speak English, but I know how that she understands Tagalog. But I don't know. I feel like she's speaking to me English, and then I'm speaking to
I
her.
sometimes I don't know.
Like
what's
parang
wrong.
I'm weird. It looks like weird.
I don't know.
It's
Like
weird.
sometimes it just comes out. Like you don't even realize you're speaking English.
Yeah.
Like
But it just
like,
comes straight.
like you're so used to speaking that particular sentences in English that you
Yeah.
don't even realize it's English.
That's right.
Yeah. Because
That's true.
what you practice.
And then
is
a while
what-
ago, I saw Jordan and sandals like this, but I don't know if they understand.
No, I understood most of it, but
Some
then there was
parts I
time
did
when
actually kind of understand. Cause,
Yeah.
like, I know like certain words and stuff, so I
Uh-huh.
was like, yeah, I think I know what you're talking
Yeah, that's why I'll just talk some English
when you're Tagalog
or maybe
deep,
like
I got
Taglish.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Taglish it's not too hard to understand.
Yeah, it's just like you know, people if they watch, for sure they'll judge my grammar or something. That's why I told her, I really
Oh, no,
don't
they
want.
won't care.
I was like,
I
I
think
really
so. No, they
don't
won't
want. I really don't want to make
It's a
interview.
Filipino association.
Yeah, it's a Filipino.
And if
Everybody who watches is like Filipino.
and if they judge, get out of it, channel.
Yeah, we'll fight them. We
But
ain't scared.
seriously, your English is good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, and you don't have to
Yeah.
feel that way. You're not in the Philippines.
You know,
You're in the
it's-
South.
It's more fun in.
And it's okay to make mistakes. You know, we're all human. We
Mm.
all make mistakes.
Yeah, I'll make mistakes.
Yeah.
Like John when you mentioned Jordan
And the twin.
instead of Jay.
Hey, congratulations to Jordan and Anna's wedding. Fuck's sake. Shit.
And then he repeated like 3 times.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait, why he said Jordan and Anna?
Yeah,
Jordan and
for-
Anna, yeah.
For context, okay, so shit. We got to the reception for Anna and James's wedding, and then
They could be a guest, by the way.
Kuya Drama was like, "Congratulations to Jordan and Anna! Give up for Jordan and Anna!" I was like,
And then one more time.
Jordan! He's saying it too confidently.
Like 3 times with confident and everyone is shouting already, but he kept saying it.
I was like in the corner, no!
How did James feel about this?
James
Everyone
was
is
like,
shouting already. It's James. It's James. It's not Jordan. But he keeps saying Jordan. Actually, he turned red. Did you saw it? Why did he turn red?
Why did it come? Like, why did he say that?
Because
again?
me and
Why
Corey
did he-
Drama-
No, because it's like he told me because sometimes he call you like James out of nowhere. Maybe because he get confused with Jordan and James.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like.
And he's close with Jordan and he's not close with James.
Right.
There was a.
So he's
Yeah.
So apparently I married Anna.
There was something
Kate.
before that. Wait, there was something before that he was talking about. Before he congratulated James and Anna, he was talking about something, and then he said Jordan, and that's why I looked at you. I was like, what, did Jordan win something? So and then
He went the
Jordan and Anna, I was like, wait, that's kind of yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
but
Probably
that's
like-
alright.
It's probably like.
I keep
more
laughing
private.
that time.
This is probably more
Even-
like
even
private
your
stuff
mom-
now.
Even your mom and dad.
So
They
this probably
keep laughing.
this is probably more private stuff. So we're gonna continue chatting. But
Yeah.
for now, that's all we've got for this
Oh
episode.
wait, before we end, at the Jen, do you want to plug in any social
Yeah,
media?
that's right. Follow Atijen at
But it's Tagalog social media.
Pake, do it.
Say it anyway.
Okay, please follow, subscribe and follow my YouTube channel, Pa-Games ni Ate Jen. And my Facebook page, same Pa-Games ni Ate Jen. Thank
that's the
you.
raffles one, huh?
No more what? No more.
Okay,
I quit it.
chicken dinner.
No more.
Alright
Just
guys,
Pa-Games
thanks
Ate
for
Jen.
watching. Like and subscribe and comment down below what you think of the episode. And we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you. Bye. Yay.
Continue.